So we are back. I am your host, Colin McIsaac. I am joined by Alex Plant.
Hey.
And Ben Lamoureux.
Hello.
To discuss Amiibo. So, between regular news and Nintendo's financial briefing this week, we learned a lot about Amiibo. So, the three of us are going to try to piece together some clues from what we've already seen and what we've learned this week to figure out what Nintendo's long-term plan is. So, first, let's have a quick recap of the Amiibo news we learned this week. First off, Nintendo did not expect the Amiibo shortage we're having to be so bad. They are aware of the scalping going on, but they don't really say any more than that. Nintendo not expecting this is likely a mix of underestimating demand and the problem with the port strike we mentioned earlier, but that they're aware of the problem hopefully means that they see the excess demand and will reprint figures in order to meet it. You may remember that they're reprinting Marth soon, and Iwata did say at the investors meeting that they might reprint certain Amiibo. Reprinting depends on whether they sell out quickly in their initial run, and they're crucial to playing a certain game. So, unfortunately, don't take this to mean that Wii Fit Trainer is going to come back anytime soon. Iwata also reconfirmed that Nintendo is developing Amiibo cards. These cards will have the same NFC functionality as the figures, and in the past, Miyamoto suggested that they could use these cheaper cards to replace some of the figures that are no longer in production. Nintendo has also mused that they could build a card game around them, so they really open up a lot of possibilities there. Nintendo is also planning to release an app that contains demos of several games that are available on Virtual Console, where scanning an Amiibo would let you play a famous scene from these games for a short time. For example, scanning a Samus Amiibo might put you at the Ridley fight from the beginning of Super Metroid, while scanning a Little Mac Amiibo could throw you into the fight against King Hippo. Nintendo is planning on making limited edition Amiibo, and not limited in the sense that we've been seeing for the past few months, limited in the sense that they are deliberately going to be released one time only, with limited supply, and never reprint again. It seems that the recently leaked gold and silver Mario Amiibos might be the first of these limited edition figures. An ad recently revealed that at least the gold Amiibo is in fact real, and it's exclusive to Walmart. So not only does it seem to be limited in quantity, but it's also limited to one retailer, which, as those of you who've been following Amiibo know, is gonna be a big double whammy. So, let's open up the discussion. What is happening with Amiibo? Could I be any more vague? Will I stop asking questions?
Yeah, so I guess the first question we want to see answered is what they're going to be doing with restocks. Because their plan seems to be, we'll keep using these figures in multiple games over time. So, for example, we have Smash Bros. Amiibo, which are also compatible with Mario Party or Hyrule Warriors or Codename Steam. Some of them are featured in a kind of more prominent way, so certain Amiibo will be more important than others in certain games. But at the same time, that means that when those games become available, the Amiibo ideally should also be available so that people who want to take advantage of that functionality can use the characters that they want. And it'd be kind of a shame if that was limited to these cards that they're talking about. It'd be nice to see reprints of the figures that come out alongside the games that they accompany.
Yeah, the cards honestly don't seem like they're gonna have nearly the same physical satisfaction of the physical figures. I didn't mean physical satisfaction.
Oh, but you did.
I meant the joy of having little figures on your desk, as opposed to just like a stack of cards that you can't see when they're stacked up anyway.
I'm sure we'll see Nintendo start to restock some of the more important ones, or maybe some of the more popular ones, but I think they're going to let a lot of them just sort of run out. There was another story, I think it was yesterday, we had an analyst, Lewis Ward, who has spoken with a lot of Nintendo executives. His viewpoint on this essentially is Nintendo's not intentionally causing shortages, but they're very pleased with them. He said, I don't think Nintendo views it as a bad thing when certain items sell out. I've sat down with several Nintendo executives over the years who've said in passing that this or that is currently sold out, and they always say it with a twinkle in their eye rather than with contrition. And I think, that's something that we're seeing here, is that Nintendo is enjoying this whole sold-out frenzy for Amiibo, and I think they're going to leave quite a few of them sold out because it's a great media buzz.
But for how long? How long, I wonder, does the product being sold out and people wanting more of the product justify not making the product? Because the longer you make people want the product, A, the more profits you're missing out on by making and selling the product, and B, the more people you're actively keeping unhappy.
Well, I think
Right.
the idea is you let some of these early amiibo sell out and stay sold out, and then in the future you release larger stocks, and there's going to be, this buying frenzy where people are worried that they're going to sell out again. So then, you sacrifice sales in the short term in order to create a buying frenzy that creates bigger sales for later batches of amiibo in the future.
Doesn't sit right with me because I'm an entitled Nintendo fan. And I really want my Martha amiibo.
I could see on the flip side where people who for some reason couldn't get or had to rush out to get an amiibo that was limited in quantity, and then suddenly they either find that their limited amiibo isn't really usable in that many games, or they want to use it and they don't have it. I could see that causing a really bad consumer goodwill when people find that amiibo just isn't accessible to them or isn't really worth it to them.
Well, I think the worth of amiibo isn't being compatible with games. This is something that I don't think a lot of people are really talking about the right way, because amiibo, like, it's good that they have value beyond just the physical figures. But let's be honest, their real value is having physical figurines of your favorite Nintendo characters. Their value isn't unlocking a new scarf in Hyrule Warriors. Their value is being able to look at this pretty little stand with Little Mac on it and say, I really like Little Mac. This looks awesome sitting next to my computer.
I think that depends a little on the person, because I know you're quite a bit of a collector, Colin, but I'm on the complete opposite side. I'm not. So, like, I bought a Pikachu amiibo when I got Smash Bros. And, I played the hell out of it, leveled it up to level 50, played it against some of my friends, and then went, okay, I've gotten some fun out of this. I need to buy some new games. I'm just going to trade this in on my next trip to GameStop. Because to me, having it as a collectible, it doesn't really give me that much value. I actually did want it specifically for the gameplay value.
See, perhaps that's true, but I don't think that amiibo are made to be valuable gameplay-enhancing items. I think they're made to be collector's items. And that's I think the difference is they're collector's items with gameplay value tacked on, and so I don't think it's wrong for them for their gameplay value to feel tacked on because it is tacked on. I mean, I don't think it's supposed to be like Skylanders or Disney Infinity where they're really integral to their games. I think it's supposed to be something else.
That might be true, but in the end, I think that's going to limit the impact of amiibo.
I agree with you on that for sure.
Right. Because Skylanders, you can count on your figures working across every Skylanders game, and they'll all be sort of used to the same extent the set they're released with on. So you don't have to worry about your Skylanders losing value or not being as valuable as some other Skylanders figurines. With Amiibo, it seems like the value comes more from the scarcity and less from the usefulness or the coolness of the character, per se. And I think that's going to be a problem for Nintendo if they really plan to use Amiibo as a way to create connections between fans and their characters or fans and their games.
I will say this, Colin. At this point in time, what we've seen Amiibo used for, I would agree that right now they have more value as a collector's item than they do as adding game experience. And I think that's something that it'll be interesting to see whether that continues as a trend or whether Nintendo changes that, because we haven't really seen any game that really makes Amiibo important. Smash Bros. Is the one that uses them the most at this point in time, and it looks like Mario Party 10 might use them about the same amount or a little more, depending on how you view it. But we haven't really had that game that makes that, Amiibo's a must-have. We haven't had a Skylanders-type game. And if Nintendo does go down that road, I think Pokemon is the franchise to do it with.
So really, you think Pokemon is the game that they're gonna strong arm Amiibo with?
Yeah, if there was gonna be a game that is Amiibo centric and that really makes you say, here's your value for Amiibos as a gameplay experience, I think Pokemon is the one to go down, is the road to go down, because it's already, a collectathon as it is, and they've even talked about, Amiibos as cards. And that's something that works very well with the Pokemon franchise
The Amiibo
as well.
cards definitely gave me an image of, like, Pokemon trading card game.
So I'm not sure at this point if Nintendo is going to treat Amiibo long-term like more of a collector's item with a little bit of game value, or more as a game accessory with collector's value. But if it's the latter, then I think Pokemon is the franchise that you really use to boost Amiibo's value as a gameplay accessory.
Like, I think that's a valid point. But I would actually say that they would make a specific Amiibo game. Because the issue I see with making Pokemon the game that really highlights Amiibo is that Amiibo, to me, and I think it's fair to say to most people who buy and follow Amiibo, and really most people who follow Nintendo news at all, is that Amiibo is really a line of Nintendo characters and the Nintendo greats, and not so much a line of, like, specific franchises. And if they strong arm it with a game of a specific franchise rather than like say Super Smash Bros., which is a celebration of different franchises, I think that it would get dangerously close to becoming a product of, say, Pokemon, for example, especially given how many Pokemon there are that they can make Amiibo out of.
All of them.
So, I really imagine more something like Smash Bros. In that it celebrates so many different franchises and incorporates all these different aspects of Nintendo into one, rather than putting Amiibo onto a pre-existing franchise that has a lot of characters that could be made into Amiibo. I would think they would take the Amiibo that sort of exist and sort of like the Smash Bros. Roster plus maybe like, more characters, maybe like King K. Rool and Dixie Kong, Captain Toad, like Splatoon Inklings and stuff, like Waluigi maybe.
Yeah.
And make a game with those kinds of characters all mixed into this sort of Nintendo melting pot.
I'm more inclined to agree with Colin as far as them not pushing Amiibo on a particular franchise, only because it seems like their stated objective is to make a platform where figurines are usable across many different games. And it seems like having a line, and I think we can all agree that a Pokemon line of Amiibo would have to be dedicated to Pokemon games. It couldn't be a cross-franchise sort of venture. So I think that would kind of run contrary to what their goals are for Amiibo. I'm not sure I agree with Colin that they're going to push too hard into the big melting pot idea, only because it seems like the best way to get a lot of use out of certain figurines is to have them then be applicable outside of a game like Smash Bros. And in games of their own franchise. So we might see a Zelda game where the Zelda Amiibo are useful. So I think we might see something more in line with that, and maybe less in line with games that are like Smash Bros. Where all of them are used in a meaningful way.
So you don't think, for example, there might be a game in the future that's like Nintendo Kart, where it's like Mario Kart, but every Amiibo unlocks a different character in like a Skylanders kind of way?
I'm inclined to say no, only because I don't think they're particularly interested in making lots of toys to life games per se. I think they're more interested in making games and then having merchandising that enhances the games, whereas a toys to life game would be more of a specific Me Too
right, it would really
sort of
more
move.
follow the Skylanders kind of model.
And along that point, Nintendo has been very careful with DLC. They were pretty much opposed to it for the longest time, and then when they finally started doing it, a big point was we want to make sure our games feel like they're complete at launch when you buy them, and then any kind of DLC is just added
Which is
on.
why their first DLC venture became Mario Galaxy 2. That's not even a joke. Like, for our listeners,
that's
just
true.
to be clear, that's like actually Mario Galaxy 2 started as DLC.
And then they decided that they wouldn't be right to sell it that way. They wanted to make it something that was special enough to be
Yeah,
its
so
own package.
it's literally ingrained into their philosophy that they want DLC to feel like a complete experience.
So I don't think that we'll see a game exactly like Skylanders where buying a figurine unlocks a character, because that's too close to, having essential DLC that you need to download to get the full game experience.
Right, and
So-
they've talked a lot about wanting to differentiate themselves from Skylanders and Disney Infinity.
Right.
So I don't think they would take active steps to make themselves more like that model.
Right, and that loops back around to their discussion of they want Amiibo to be this thing where you don't buy a game for your Amiibo, you buy Amiibo for your games. So they talked about cards, and I'm not sure how I feel about cards. We've sort of alluded to this before, but it seems like the value of toys to life is that they're toys that come to life. And it seems like Amiibo in particular was designed to be a quality toys to life venture done the Nintendo way, not some cheap half-assed compromise to make NFC work or to make NFC cheap enough for them to sell. I don't think that pushing Amiibo in that direction, that sort of half-assed compatibility release approach, would be good for Amiibo as a brand. I think maybe making a separate card venture that uses NFC and maybe calling it Amiibo might be a better approach, as long as the cards themselves have some distinct value.
Right, that's my thought too. I could see Nintendo making like detailed trading cards, like for Pokemon example, or for other franchises.
Hanafuda cards.
But yeah, go back to the roots. But if it's just gonna be, a card you buy specifically just to unlock content in your game, and the card itself doesn't have any value, then what's the point? Just have it be a DLC. Don't have it be a physical card that you go to the store and buy and then scan it once, and then the card's pretty much useless after that.
Yeah, it'd be fun to have a Nintendo trading card game.
Absolutely.
Where the Amiibo cards are actually, you can play with them without using them digitally, or maybe you can play the Amiibo card game online. That might be something that I could...
Sort of like how they took the idea of Pokemon battles and turned it into a card game, they could take the idea of Smash Bros. Battles and turn it into an Amiibo card game.
Right. It wouldn't be them selling a video game piecemeal, it'd be them selling a separate thing.
Yeah.
So I think
I'm trying to think of an Amiibo Hearthstone pun, and those words are just way too different.
And card games are in their DNA too. So you mentioned Hanafuda a little while ago. I don't know but Hanafuda was their roots, and they still make the cards today. So I could see them seeing Amiibo entertainment in a broader way that could include a card game.
That would actually be a very Nintendo move to dig up Hanafuda cards and then reintroduce them as part of their, as part of what they do today.
Yeah, well, they say all the time, they're not necessarily a games company, they're an entertainment company. Mm-hmm. So, entertainment includes card games, and their video games are popular-ish, and so, maybe a card game to go with that would be fun.
Yeah. So let's talk about that Virtual Console app. What do you guys think about that? I kind of feel like they're making steps toward making a game that's built around using Amiibo in the best way possible. But because they're really using them as a way to unlock games that already exist, they're not quite there yet. I feel like they're thinking about it and they're just kind of getting it wrong.
Well, yeah, I'd say so too. Iwata said something in the meeting about how their vision for this Virtual Console thing is for the Amiibo to be kind of like a replacement for a game cartridge. And my reaction to that is, why don't you just make them replacements for game cartridges? Why don't you just have the Amiibo unlock a Virtual Console game or unlock a steep discount on a Virtual Console game tied to that franchise gear?
Well, especially if you buy like a Link Amiibo for $13. The Zelda 1 on the eShop is what, $3?
Right, but
just come on.
Right. I don't know that necessarily is the right approach, just because so many people who would be the kind of people to buy a Zelda Amiibo might already have Zelda on Virtual Console, but the least they could do is say, okay, we know you're interested in this franchise. We're going to be releasing more games that are part of this franchise. We'll give you a discount. It doesn't have to be a huge discount. It just should be something on this franchise. Maybe $5 for a $60 game, or maybe like $2 for a $5 Virtual Console game. I don't know.
I quite like the idea of just unlocking a Virtual Console game flat out, because to me, like, it says that there's an actual like gameplay reason, like a very, very prominent one, why you would buy an Amiibo, and you'd scan it into the Wii U, unlock like a full game, and it's a game that honestly most people who are gonna buy Amiibo have owned in at least one way.
Right.
Like, I can't tell you how many different versions of Zelda 1 I've bought.
Right.
I think that kind of model, where an Amiibo would unlock a virtual game, but an old one that most of us have probably played before, that wouldn't really cost Nintendo much money to give away to one person for free anyway.
Well, especially not when they're already paying $13.
Exactly. And especially, like, you mentioned that, like, the kind of person who buys a Link Amiibo might also be the kind of person who already has Zelda 1 on Wii U. Then they just don't get a free game. The game that they could get for free has already been paid for, and too bad.
Yeah, maybe. I guess I'd just rather see that kind of perfect storm situation where Amiibo were released at the right time, that not everybody had already bought into everything on Virtual Console. And so Amiibo would suddenly be this gateway for people to play a bunch of old games and share them maybe with their friends, so their friends could maybe play temporarily off their Amiibo. You know, they obviously that didn't happen. They released
maybe have like one unlock code that like gets you a free copy of the game, and then like 5 more unlock codes that you can scan on someone else's Wii U that get like that download like the demo automatically.
Yeah, well, something where
that.
it's only playable if you've actually scanned the Amiibo in, and then when you exit that session, you might have to scan it in again to do the guest play or whatever.
Right.
Because that's the use case that you'd probably see, is people want to share their game with their friends, so they bring their Amiibo over to their friend's house. But I don't think this demo thing is going to have that same effect. Not even close.
Take something like Earthbound. What is the NES Amiibo going to be used for other than Smash Bros?
Yeah.
That would give it like a very clear value. Something that really gives it a purpose to exist. Because, you know, like the Duck Hunt Amiibo is not going to be used for for anything at all. But if it unlocked a copy of Duck Hunt on the Virtual Console, that would give people more of a reason to buy it besides just the collector's value.
Oh, come on. You know they're going to add a Duck Hunt shooting gallery to Splatoon. Only available with the Duck Hunt Amiibo. I don't know. I could see them. They'd have to shoehorn them in.
Well, obviously the NES
yeah,
Amiibo is going to have value when they bring Mother 3 to America.
Yeah.
Stop it.
And if you scan in your NES Amiibo with Mother 3, though, you'll unlock Mother 1.
You'll unlock a demo for Mother 1.
It hurts, doesn't it?
You're tormenting me.
But yeah, no, I agree. They're kind of leaving potential on the table. Because yeah, what else are these small franchise Amiibo going to be used for outside of Smash?
And if Nintendo are the ones who are leaving the potential on the table, then who's left to upend it?
Well, we don't have another. Right. I caught the joke.
So, you know, we already know Amiibo have seen like phenomenal success, even with so many stock shortages. So it only makes sense to me that Nintendo would want to promote the product line as like a major part of its brand moving forward, especially if we're going to see them licensing their IP to leverage their franchises into like a really dominant multimedia kind of thing. They mentioned like, quote, aggressive IP licensing, and you know, we've heard mumblings of like a Zelda TV series and like that Mario movie that's probably not happening at this point. But I think it would really make sense from a merchandising perspective to really push Amiibo very hard in that sense. Because especially, you know, if someone say like goes out to see the Mario movie and they see before the movie an ad for Amiibo, like you can get your favorite Mario figurine. Then they go to a store to buy a Mario Amiibo and they see like Villager and like Marth, and they're introduced to all these other franchises that Nintendo has to offer. I think that could really be an extremely effective way to leverage their IP.
If they go into a store and see a Villager and a Marth Amiibo, then they are very lucky.
You know what I mean, though.
Yeah, and not just from a merchandising perspective or an IP perspective even, but it could be a good way to sell their platform, because their platform has the NFC stuff built in, so their platform is already Amiibo ready. They've even added it to new 3DS now. I don't know if you've made this connection, but if you look at the new 3DS logo, the new is styled after the Amiibo logo. So they definitely see it as a core piece of their hardware value.
So everybody, thank you very much for listening. That is the end of this week. But if you're just catching up with us, you can catch last week's episode at iTunes, Podbean. You can see it on YouTube. You can see it here at Gamnesia if you want to dig back in the archives. So be sure, if you like this podcast, to subscribe either on iTunes or YouTube. iTunes, you will get it on Wednesday. YouTube, you will get the recap discussion on Thursday, and you will get the discussion on Friday. Be sure, if you like the podcast, again, to head to iTunes and leave a review. It really helps us with visibility. We really, really appreciate it. You can go to Gamnesia.com for more news on other aspects of the video game industry. You know, we got Microsoft, Sony, we've got a couple mobile things. And of course, more Nintendo news that we didn't have the time to discuss here on the podcast today. And be sure to send us questions. You can send us questions to colin@gamnesia.com. Currently, we will be holding a question and answer block when we get enough questions that we can fill an entire block with. So we will be doing those as well. Be sure to send us questions and also feedback. If you have something to say about the podcast, please say it, and we will embrace it with open ears, open arms, open hearts, open legs. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we hope you have a wonderful week.